Hello friends, welcome to Everstudy Classes. In this video, we continue our discussion on the past 5 MCQs which we are running from the past few days as part of the blast from the past 5 MCQ series. So the series is particularly relevant for the aspirants who are preparing for the UGC Net Commerce Examination, in which we are regularly discussing the important MCQs which have been asked in the past and which have a very high probability of being repeated in the future. And through this particular video, we try to understand how to solve the questions which have been asked in the past in order to obtain the complete conceptual understanding so that we answer and handle any similar question which is being asked in the future. And the topic for the today's discussion is business statistics. Now, before moving forward, let me quickly tell you about the courses which Everstudy Classes is presently running for UGC Net Commerce aspirants. Now, there are different sets of free courses and paid courses. And if we talk about the free courses, then there is a free mock test, and that mock test is now available online on our website www.everstudy.co.in. And you can attempt this particular mock test just by enrolling yourself. And I would request you guys that you should attempt this mock test because it would give you a look and feel of how the computer based test is going to be. Next is in regard to the video analysis of past year papers, in which we are going to analyze the importance of past year papers and also covering the questions which are asked in the previous papers in a very conceptual manner in order to make sure if these questions are repeated, we will be able to get them right. And also we have already posted the past year papers for last 10 years with regard to UGC Net Commerce Examination, and this particular video which I am presently recording is also posted in this particular free course. We also have free course of unit wise glossary in which we are covering all the important terms associated with these unit in a short and crisp manner, and we are also providing the free MCQs for practice which you guys can do after you complete this reading of glossary. And also we have recently launched the test series for the UGC Net Commerce Examination 2018. Now you have two options from which you can choose. First one is full length mock test series in which we are giving 6 full length mocks at 499, and this will be full length mocks in itself as they will comprise all the units of the syllabus, and these will be very similar to the type of the examination pattern that you will be getting. And the main feature is that you will get the real exam like experience. So friends, you might aware from this particular attempt, UGC Net Examination in general has made a computer based test, so you would have to give this test on computers, and we try to simulate the entire platform which will be there in the actual examination. So when ultimately the time comes to appear in the main examination, then you are very much aware and well versed with the pattern. Also, we have full length series, the complete test series, in which we are giving 12 sectional tests, and each test will have 100 questions, each from different units which are there in the course, and also we are giving 6 full length mock tests, and the same features are going to apply for this particular series also. Okay, let's begin our discussion with the first question. Which of the following is not a restricted random sampling technique? Options are number 1 stratified sampling, number 2 simple random sampling, number 3 systematic sampling, and number 4 is multi-stage sampling. So this question is in regard to the sampling techniques and particularly asking about to identify that technique which is not a restricted random sampling technique. So in order to answer this particular question, we must have a proper understanding that what is random sampling and what are its various techniques. Now, what is random sampling? Random sampling is the method of selecting a sample in which every unit of the population has equal chance of being selected in the sample. Therefore, it is also known as the probability sampling technique. Further, the random sampling method is divided into simple random sampling and the restricted random sampling. Now, what is simple random sampling? Simple random sampling is that method in which each item of the universe has an equal chance of being selected in the sample. Moreover, there is no restriction on the items. It means which item will be included in the sample and which not, Such decision is not made by an investigator on his will, but the selection of the units is left on the chance. Therefore, this is also known as the unrestricted random sampling technique. Next is the restricted random sampling. Now, in this case of sampling, investigator puts some additional control on the process of element selection. It means there is a restriction on the selection of units for a sample. And there are various variants under the restricted random sampling. First is the stratified sampling. So, under this method, the total population is divided into different groups or classes in accordance with their characteristics, and these groups or classes is known as strata. It means that the population is first divided into homogeneous groups so that none of the groups may be missed. And within the groups, there is a homogeneity, and between the groups, there shall be a heterogeneity. And then by using the random sampling, the sample items are selected from each stratum. For example, 150 students are to be selected out of 1500 students of a college. Then, firstly, the college students will be divided into three groups, say arts, commerce, and science. Suppose there are 500 students in arts, 700 in commerce, and 300 in science, and 10% sample is to be taken. Then, on the basis of random sampling, 50, 70, and 30 students respectively will be selected by using a random sampling. So, this method assumes equal representation to each class or group, and all the units of the universe get equal chance of being selected in the sample. And the second method is the systematic sampling. Now, under this, all the units are systematically arranged, and the first unit is selected at random from the population, and then the subsequent units are selected at equal intervals, that is, by taking every kth item from the list, where k is equal to small n divided by capital N. Now, here k refers to the sampling ratio, small n denotes the size of the sample, and capital N denotes the size of the universe. And the list from which the units are to be selected may be prepared either in alphabetical order, geographical order, numerical, or some other. Now, let's try to understand with the help of an example. Say we are required to select the 5 students out of 50 students. Now, 5 denotes the size of the sample and 50 denotes the size of the universe. So, the sampling ratio will be 50 divided by 5, that is 10. Now, this 10 is the interval on the basis of which the subsequent units are to be selected. So, the first unit is selected at a random basis and it comes out to be 5, fifth item. Then the subsequent numbers would be 15th, 25th, 35th, and 45th, which is based on the interval. Next is multi-stage sampling. Now, in this method, firstly, the entire universe or population is divided into stages or substages, and from each substage, some units are selected on random sampling basis. And thereafter, these units are subdivided, and on the basis of random sampling, again subunits are selected. Thus, this goes on with subdivision further and selection. For example, for the purpose of a study regarding the adult education, first some districts will be selected on random basis. Thereafter, out of the selected district, some tehsils, and out of tehsils, some villages or towns may be selected. Further, out of villages or towns, some wards, and out of the wards, some households will be selected from whom the inquiry will be made concerning the problem at hand. So we can say that when sampling procedure passes through many stages, then it is known as multi-stage sampling. So based on our discussion, we can easily identify a non-restricted random sampling technique. So it is simple random sampling technique. As we discussed that there are two types of random sampling technique. First is unrestricted random sampling technique and the second is restricted random sampling technique. So this simple random sampling technique is a part of the unrestricted random sampling technique, and others like stratified, systematic, and multi-stage sampling techniques are the part of restricted random sampling techniques. So the correct answer is option number 2. Moving forward to the next question. If unexplained variation between the variables x and y is 36%, then what is the coefficient of correlation between the variables? Now, to calculate the coefficient of correlation between the variables, we must aware with the concept of the coefficient of determination and coefficient of non-determination. Now let's try to calculate the coefficient of correlation by understanding the concept behind this question. So the first is the coefficient of determination. Now the concept of the coefficient of determination is used for interpreting the correlation coefficient, and it is also used to compare the two or more correlation coefficients by determining that how much variance the two variables share, or how much variance is explained or accounted for by a set of variables in an outcome variable. It means that the coefficient of determination explains the percentage variation in the dependent variable, say y, that can be explained in the terms of independent variable, say x. Now this coefficient of determination is the square of the coefficient of correlation and denoted by r square. Inversely, there is a coefficient of non-determination, which explains that how much variance is unexplained or unaccounted for between the two variables or between a set of variables in an outcome variable. And this coefficient of non-determination is simply 1 minus r square. Now let's try to understand with the help of example. If correlation coefficient is 0.9, then the coefficient of determination is the square of the coefficient of correlation, which comes out to be 0.81, which implies that 81% of the total variation in the dependent variable, say y, occurs due to the independent variable x, and the remaining 19% variation occurs due to the outside or the external factors which are unexplained and denotes the coefficient of non-determination. Now in this particular question, we are given with the unexplained variance, that is 36%, which denotes the coefficient of non-determination. Now by assuming the total variance as 1, the coefficient of determination can be determined by subtracting the coefficient of non-determination from 1, which comes out to be 64%. And this interprets that the 64% of the total variation in the dependent variable occurs due to the independent variable, which is explained and which can be accounted for. But the remaining 36% variation occurs due to the outside or external factors which are unexplained. Now we are required to calculate the coefficient of correlation. Now this coefficient of correlation is the square root of the coefficient of determination, which comes out to be 0.8. So the correct answer is given by the option number 4, that is 0.8. Next question is, which one of the following is a false description? Options are number 1, in a moderately asymmetrical distribution, the empirical relationship between mean, mode and median suggested by the Karl Pearson is that the difference between the mean and the mode is 3 times the difference between the mean and the median. Next option is, coefficient of variation is an absolute measure of dispersion. Third option is, measure of skewness indicates the direction and the extent of skewness in the distribution of numerical values in the data set. And the last option is, kurtosis refers to the degree of flatness or peakness in the region around the mode of a frequency curve. Now if you see this question, there are different concepts which are being asked in this particular question, and we are required to identify the false statement from this following statements. So the explanation to the first statement is like, in a symmetrical distribution, mean, median and mode are identical and have the same value. However, in actual life, most distributions are not symmetrical because they are skewed in nature. And in cases of moderately skewed or moderately asymmetrical distributions, the value of the mean, median and mode have the following empirical relationship, which is given by the Karl Pearson, which depicts that the difference between the mean and the mode is 3 times the difference between the mean and the median. And this equation can also be expressed in the following manner, like mode is equal to 3 median minus 2 mean. Second is, median is equal to 1/3 of the 2 mean minus mode. And the last is, mean is equal to half of 3 median minus mode. Now the second statement is related to the measure of dispersion, and this measure of dispersion may either be absolute or relative. And the absolute measure of dispersion is expressed in the same units, that is the concrete units in which the data of the series are expressed. It means they are expressed in the same statistical units like rupees, kilograms, tons, years, centimeters, etc. And the relative measure of dispersion refers to the variability stated in the form of ratio or percentage, and this relative measure of dispersion is independent of the unit of measurement. Therefore, it is also known as the coefficient of dispersion. And the coefficient of variation is a relative measure of dispersion, and it was developed by the Karl Pearson, and it is widely used in comparing the variability, homogeneity, stability, consistency, and uniformity of two or more series. And it interprets that the series having less value of coefficient of variation is considered more consistent in comparison to a series having higher value. And the coefficient of variation is denoted by the CV, and it is given by the formula, that is, standard deviation is divided by the mean. Next is about the skewness. Now, skewness measures how asymmetric the distribution is. It means the curve appears distorted or skewed either to the left or to the right. Also, the skewness can be quantified to define the extent to which a distribution differs from a normal distribution. Next is about the kurtosis. Now, this kurtosis indicates whether a frequency distribution is more flat topped or more peaked than the normal distribution. And the kurtosis of a distribution is one of the three categories of classification. It can be mesokurtic, leptokurtic, and platykurtic. Now, a curve having high peak than the normal curve is called the leptokurtic. In such a curve, there is too much concentration of the items near the center. Next is a curve having a low peak or the flat top than the normal curve is called the platykurtic. In such a curve, there is less concentration of items near the center. And the next is a curve having normal peak or the normal curve itself is called the mesokurtic. In such a curve, there is equal distribution of the items around the central curve. So based on our explanation, we can easily identify the false statement, which is given by the option number 2. That is, the coefficient of variation is a relative measure of dispersion, not an absolute measure of dispersion. Next question is, Karl Pearson's coefficient of correlation between two variables is option number 1, the product of their standard deviations. Second option is the square root of the product of the regression coefficients. Option number 3 is the covariance between the variables, and option number D is none of the above. So the Karl Pearson's coefficient of correlation is a quantitative method of measuring the correlation. It is a measure of the strength of a linear association between two variables, and it is denoted by R or Rxy, that is the correlation between the variables x and y. And the coefficient of correlation between the two variables x and y is the simple geometric mean of two regression coefficients, that is bxy and byx, and symbolically it can be expressed in the following manner. So the correct answer is option number 2, that is Karl Pearson's coefficient of correlation between the two variables is the square root of the product of their regression coefficients. Last question is, statistical software packages for research in social sciences include number 1 SPSS, number 2 Stata, number 3 Minitab, and fourth option is all of the above. Now let's discuss about these software packages given in this particular question. So the first is the SPSS. It stands for Statistical Package for the Social Sciences, and it is a software package which is used in statistical analysis of the data. And this SPSS was developed by SPSS Incorporation, and then in 2009 it was acquired by IBM. And in 2014 the software was officially renamed as IBM SPSS Statistics. And this software what was originally meant for the social sciences but has become popular in other fields such as health sciences and especially in marketing, market research, and data mining. So we can say that SPSS is an application that can aid in quantitative data handling, and before SPSS the researchers had to run statistical tests on data sets by hand. However, SPSS automates this process. Next is Stata. Now, Stata is another powerful statistical software package which enables the users to analyze, manage, and produce the graphical visualizations of the data. And it is primarily used by the researchers in the fields of economics, biomedicine, and political science to examine the data patterns. And this Stata software has both a command line and graphical user interface which makes the use of software more intuitive. Next is Minitab. Now, Minitab originally intended as a tool for teaching statistics, It is a journal purpose statistics software package which is designed for easy interactive use. And this mini tab is well suited for instructional applications and also is a powerful enough to be used as a primary tool for analyzing the research data. So based on our discussion, we come to know that all the software which are given in this particular question are the statistical software packages for research in social sciences. So the correct answer is option number 4. So friends, this is all about our today's discussion on past 5 MCQ series for UGC Net Commerce. Thank you friends for watching this video. If you like this video, please like the same and share it with your friends. And please do subscribe our YouTube channel for regular updates. And if you have any query, you can mail us at hello@everstudy.in, or you can even join us on Facebook page, and you can even follow us on Telegram. And the links of all these are given in the description of this particular video.